This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
From Houston, Texas, this is the Liberty Root Podcast.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
History is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Hello and Guten Tag. Thank you for joining us once again here on the Liberty Root Podcast this week. I want to jump right in talking about the short, little, fat man, bowl cut, toting, pantsuit trading partner with Hillary Clinton, Kim Jong-un. And what's fascinating about this whole supposed nuclear North Korea discussion is, have you guys noticed the way the media is covering this whole thing with North Korea? It's quite fascinating because the liberals on the media, they're more focused on what the president is saying than they are with the threat of a nuclear North Korea. I mean, and this isn't something new with the media. I mean, this is something that's been going on for my lifetime, at least. I mean, they did it with Reagan, and they did it with Bush, and now they're doing it with Trump because they're all, well, I'm not sure about the latter with Trump being conservative, but they're all, ran as Republicans and got nominated as Republicans. And the media doesn't like anything more than to ruin a conservative or Republican's reputation by plastering, everything they say, and they twist everything they say to make it look like they're incompetent and just downright imbeciles. I mean, and that's just the business of the media today. I mean, there's nothing that really we can do about it. Is we just have to be informed and realize that none of these outlets, I mean, there's a few out there still, but nothing on television. The outlets who are actually giving you fact-based driven information are the ones online, such as like the Daily Wire and the Blaze and things like that. Those are, in my opinion, reliable sources for information and news. But like I said, the media is just in the entertainment business. That's the only way that that's the only reason that they're there, is just to entertain and get viewers, because if they get viewers, their ratings go up, and if their ratings go up, then that means a pay raise when their contract is up. So when you think that, their intentions are to be looking out for you and giving you stuff of importance or relevance, you pretty much just need to shut down that thought process immediately and just view it as entertainment only. And now the media is attacking Donald Trump with his comments that he made about attacking North Korea with fire and fury. And as soon as Donald Trump made those comments, of course the media just freaks out and says, we're going to a war, we're gonna get ourselves involved in another international conflict, but we, meaning people here on the Liberty Root podcast who listen and the people who actually have common sense across the country, they know by now that Trump likes to speak a lot of times without thinking. And especially Trump likes to speak without thinking when he feels like he is personally pressured, whether that's being the media or someone within his administration. He likes to to snap back right away without, having something planned out and thought out before he actually does it. I mean, his Twitter account is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I mean, Trump wants you to perceive him like, he is this tough man and nothing gets under his skin. But in all actuality, his feelings are very sensitive and they get hurt with, any kind of derogatory statement that is aimed at him. I mean, look what happened with Mitch McConnell when he was caught on that private video, talking about Trump and how Trump's expectations are too high, and it's the expectations that he has, are unfathomable, and they can't get it done in his time frames and all that stuff when he was being recorded. And what did Trump do immediately? He got on the phone, called Mitch McConnell, and he chewed him out. And in this instance with Mitch McConnell, I really don't have any reservations with applauding Trump here, because you guys know my disdain and dislike that I carry for Mitch McConnell. But that's just a perfect example to go to show that when anything is said about the president that he doesn't like or takes it personally and his feelings get hurt, I mean, he doesn't hesitate. He instantly either attacks the person, directly and immediately, or he, makes it seem as though like he comes up with some kind of clever tweet to make it come off as though, even though he doesn't mention their name specifically, who he's still talking about or attacking. I mean, in this whole North Korea thing, I mean, we haven't done any action yet other than the sanctions that we've put on them. I mean, the military in Guam is still the same number that we had, before all these missile launching and the threats of a nuclear attack by North Korea. I mean, the seas are still being patrolled in the same way that they always were. I mean, nothing militarily has changed up until this point. But, Trump may have felt like he was being backed into a corner. So during that, press conference that he had, I believe, was he at Mar-a-Lago when he made that? I'm not sure I think he was at Mar-a-Lago when he made that press conference saying that we will attack with fire and fury. And we have that clip of his remarks that he made, and we'll play that here. Let's listen.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you. Thank you.
And while I don't disagree with the statement that Trump made, you know he's just talking, and it doesn't really carry much weight with what he's saying. And the reason I know that is because as soon as he made those remarks, North Korea came out and said, we're going to attack South Korea, we're going to attack Guam, we're going to, possibly attack Tokyo, and nothing happened. I mean, and in that speech, Trump said, if you make any more threats, we're going to attack you with fire and fury. Well, that just didn't happen. I mean, even when dictator Obama was in the White House, he would say North Korea better stop with their threats, and if they continue to make threats, then he would protect America by choosing military action. Well, we all know that North Korea made more threats since that statement was made, and nothing happened. So I think that's why all this talk right now in society is about, nuke them, we're going to another war. And all. I mean, you have two sides of it. You have the people who are saying, no, we can't get into another war. And then you have, the Trumpsters out there who are like, yeah, war! But when all actuality, nothing is really happening yet. And I can't say either way how it will go. I don't know. I mean, there's part of me that, wants to attack, but then I also hold some reservation because of what that entails. I mean, look at the Iraq War and the war in the Middle East. I mean, it's, over a decade, well over a decade later, and we're still there. I mean, there's still remnants of it today. and people, our soldiers that we're sending over there, are still dying today. So, I mean, do we want to get into something else like that again? But at the same time, America's safety and ridding out corrupt regimes such as the one in North Korea, they also need to be taken care of. But it's like, how do you go about doing that? But right now the media is acting like we're at war now. Like, I mean, we're sending fighter jets there today, drones overhead right now, just waiting for the guy with the briefcase cuffed to his arm for Trump to be able to deploy the nuclear warheads on North Korea, which that's just not the case right now, although the media wants you to think it is. And if you as Americans are getting any kind of information from anybody, and as sad as it says, I don't get my information that I rely on, that I view as being trustworthy, from Donald Trump. The one person that I do have a lot of faith in, and I do is going to tell it like it is, and what he says will come to fruition, is General Mattis. And this is something that's really kind of interesting about Mattis's tone that has transpired over the past 2 weeks. And if you remember, a few weeks ago, Mattis was saying, he was hoping that this could be resolved through diplomacy, and then that's when the sanctions were implemented against North Korea, the billions of dollars in sanctions against them. And, even China got on board with that, in hopes that if North Korea saw China was on board with the new sanctions that we were going to put on them, that, they would kind of back off. Well, that just didn't happen. If anything, the threats became more intense. And then Mattis came out, just a few days ago and said North Korea should cease any consideration of actions that would lead to the end of its regime and the destruction of its people. I mean, and this is fascinating. I mean, Mattis is, it's hard to say Mattis is reserved, because he's, if there's anybody who's going to lead us into a war, although we don't want that to happen, but if there's anybody to lead us into a war, I mean, I can't think of anybody else on the planet who would we want in that situation than Mad Dog Mattis. So, I mean, the tone of Mattis now is very interesting, and it kind of complements, what Trump was saying. But the difference between the two is Mattis isn't saying, if you threaten us one more time, we're going to attack. He was just saying North Korea, as a warning, should cease any consideration of action. To lead you to believe that if it continues, Mattis is not going to let them get a nuclear weapon strapped to a rocket and let it go up in the air. I mean, he will take action before that happens. Trump, on the other hand, is the one who says, you even threaten us again, we're going to unleash fire and fury. So it's all about diction and language that's being used of why you should trust one over the other. And in this case, and in almost every case, Mattis most definitely is more trustworthy in language than President Trump. Even though we could very well be on the cusp of something militarily, which nobody knows at this point, the media wants you to think that we are going to be involved in this nuclear war, when right now that's just not the case. And even though we want to embrace the language that Trump used as far as hitting them with fire and fury, we know that from past things that anything Trump has said really is just a compound of sentences that are spoken, but no action actually taken based off of those words. I mean, for example, look at healthcare. I mean, we're going to repeal and replace it. Well, that was a disaster. Look at the wall. We're going to make Mexico pay for it. Mexico's not paying for it, and we still don't have anything taking place as far as a wall being built. So he likes to say these things and, make them sound good, but in all actuality, he just likes to talk. I mean, and the media knows that he does this kind of talk, but in this particular situation, they want you to believe, by portraying to everybody, that Trump is sending us into a war right now, that we are going into an all-out war. And the media blames Trump and his administration for this whole North Korea thing. But Trump's been in office, going 8 months now? This isn't Trump. This isn't Trump at all. I mean, in all actuality, the Obama administration added fuel to the fire, but the fire was originally started under the Clinton administration when Clinton gave them billions of dollars to enhance their electrical grid and other things to benefit and help the country, and promise from North Korea, the evil regime that they are, that they wouldn't develop or continue to develop nuclear weapons. Well, fast forward to 2017, and what is the thank you that we get for all the billions of dollars that we gave them? We've got nuclear weapons, a nuclear North Korea, thanks to Clinton and thanks to the gasoline that was put on the fire by the Obama administration. And now we're at a stage where this thing is developed into something that is serious, and indications from Mattis that it is an imminent threat. And they push it on to Trump when Trump is the one trying to, and Mattis are the ones who are trying to smother the fire, not, add more fuel to it. But see, the media just views Clinton as being a genius and the best president, and they view Obama as being a god and perfect, and they have, they hold no responsibility for the situation that we're in right now. When the truth of the matter is, Clinton's priority was, having extramarital affairs, and Obama's main priority was dragging our country down as far as he could possibly drag it. Even though I agree that Trump needs to kind of, with what he says, he needs to be good on and not just say it because it sounds good. He actually needs to be good on his word. I do believe that he has the best intentions for America, and I think that with Mattis in his ear, they will, and they're going to resolve this issue with North Korea. I just don't know the way it's gonna play out. If it'll be militarily, or if there will be another way to do this. At this point, I don't know of another way to be able to do it. And a lot of people right now are saying, the people of North Korea, we can't put their lives in jeopardy. And I agree. I hate the loss of any innocent lives. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat this or make it sound, I don't know the word I'm looking for. I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying we need to wipe out the whole country regardless, just for protection of American citizens, because that's not what I'm trying to say, because I don't want, like I said, I don't want any civilian casualties here or in North Korea or Guam or Japan. But the mindset, even in North Korea, of their citizens is haste and hate to America. There's a documentary right now on Netflix, and it's called The Rising Sun. I recommend that everybody watch it. It's very fascinating because it shows how children from a very young age are indoctrinated in their schools in North Korea there's this creed that they say every day before their lesson plan begins, and it's pretty much saying that America is the evil, the evil country, North Korea is all righteous, and that their leaders, when it was Kim Jong-il and now Kim Jong-un, are saints, essentially, and that all praise and glory needs to be directed to our wonderful leaders of North Korea. And they're indoctrinated this, like I said, from a very young age, so when they get older, they that's the only way that they know to think. They think America is evil, and everything North Korea does and says is worth its weight in gold. And then their lesson plans, after they do this creed and this allegiance to their leaders, their lesson plan is from books of the history of North Korea that were written and put together by the leaders of North Korea. So there's one instance in the movie where a teacher's up at the front of the class and she's reading from this book, and it's pretty much, the whole book is just all praise for the leadership of North Korea and their way of thinking and how it's pure and just. And anybody who comes in conflict with their thinking is evil and needs to be destroyed. I mean, these are 6, 7, 8-year-old kids who are learning this. And every time the teacher says something, she'll read a sentence out of the book, all the students repeat after her. And it just gets ingrained into their brain that America is evil and North Korea is the almighty power of the world. And I don't want to put a blanket opinion on the innocent people of North Korea, but I'm just saying that's the way a lot of them think. They're all very like-minded to that of the leadership of North Korea, because that's all they've ever known. I mean, there are the people, like there's a story of a girl, and I'm going to finish this segment with playing her speech here in just a few minutes, and this is where it's hard to differentiate their indoctrination with the people who rejected that indoctrination and who are really good people trying to escape North Korea because they see it for what it is, an evil, evil, evil regime. So it's just a very hard thing, because you want the leadership wiped out, and at the same time, a lot of those people support that leadership, but you don't want to hurt those innocent people. You want them to see the light and realize that we aren't evil and that their leadership is evil. So it's really difficult to even talk about the way of going about all of this. It's very difficult. And even with the indoctrination that's been going on in North Korea and with their schools and with young people being taught to believe a certain way. After hearing this story of a young girl, I'm about to play the video of her story from escaping North Korea. It's very moving and very emotional. But even though these children and people are being indoctrinated like this is all that they've ever known. This is all they've ever seen. So we need, no matter what happens through all of this, if we do end up going to an arms race or a full out war, we need to stand with the citizens of North Korea and help them come to a place of realization that America is there to help, and by eliminating a regime such as Kim Jong-un and his men, we can also set them free and show them who we really are. Show them that we aren't an evil country, that we are there for their best interest. So yeah, I'm gonna play this speech now, and it's from a Yomi Park, and it's just a very fascinating story. It's a little bit long, but I think it needs to be heard. Her story needs to be heard to show you how she was raised in such a way, but she was able to see it for what it was, and she was able to escape and chart her course and finally to be able to taste freedom for the first time. So here's her story.
I have to do this because this is not I'm speaking. This is the people who want to tell the world what they want to do. North Korea is an unimaginable country. There is only one channel on TV. There is no internet. We aren't free to sing, say, wear, or think what we want. North Korea is the only country in the world that executes people for making unauthorized international phone calls. North Koreans are being terrorized today. When I was growing up in North Korea, I never saw anything about love stories between men and women. No books, no songs, no press, no movies about love stories. There's no Romeo and Juliet. Every story was propaganda to brainwash us about the Kim dictators. I was born in 1993, and I was abducted at birth, even before I knew the words freedom or human rights. North Koreans are desperately seeking and dying for freedom at this moment. When I was 9 years old, I saw my friend's mother publicly executed. Her crime? Watching a Hollywood movie. Expressing doubt about the greatness of the regime can get 3 generations of a family imprisoned or executed. When I was 4 years old, I was warned by my mother not to even whisper. The birds and mice couldn't hear me. I admitted I thought the North Korean dictator could read my mind. My father died in China after we escaped North Korea. And I had to bury him at 3 a.m. in secret. I was 14 years old. I couldn't even cry. I was afraid to be sent back to North Korea. The day I escaped North Korea, I saw my mother raped. The rapist was a Chinese broker. He targeted me. I was 13 years old. There is a saying in North Korea, women are weak, but mothers are strong. My mother allowed herself to be raped in order to protect me. North Korean refugees, about 300,000, are vulnerable in China. 70% of North Korean and teenage girls are being victimized, sometimes sold for as little as $200. We walked across the Gobi Desert, following a compass. When they stopped working, we followed the stars to freedom. I felt only the stars were with us. Mongolia was our freedom moment. Death or dignity. Armed with knives, we were prepared to kill ourselves if we were going to be sent back to North Korea. We wanted to live as humans. People often ask me, how can we help North Koreans? There are many ways, but I would like to mention 3 for now. 1, educate yourself so you can raise awareness about human crisis in North Korea. 2, help and support North Korean refugees who are trying to escape to freedom. 3, petition China's stop repatriation. We have to shed a light on the darkest place in the world. It isn't just North Korean human rights. It's our rights that North Korean dictators have violated for 7 decades. We need governments all around the world to put more pressure on China to stop repatriation. In particular, Chinese delegates of One Young World can play a part by speaking up. North Korea is indescribable. No humans deserve to be oppressed just because of their birthplace. We need to focus less on the regime and more on the people who are being forgotten. one young world. We are the ones who will make them visible. Fellow delegates, please join me as we make this a global movement to free North Koreans. When I was crossing the Gobi Desert, scared of dying, I thought nobody in this world cared. It seemed that only the stars were with me. But you have listened to my story. You have cared. Thank you very much.
What if I told you could be the winner of our next free gift card giveaway? What if I told you that just by liking our Facebook page, you're entered? What if you already like our page? Can you still win? Absolutely! All you need to do is share our Facebook page and boom, you'll be entered! And now through Saturday, August 26th, you have the chance to be our next winner. The winner will be announced on August 30th podcast. So go, click, like, and share today.
Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Liberty Root podcast. What happened this past weekend did, in fact, happen in this country, and this is quickly becoming the new norm in today's society. This past weekend, a white nationalist socialist, aka current-day Nazi, crashed his car into a group of people in Charlottesville, Virginia. One person dead and many others injured. And just like my last segment, I want to focus on the immediate reaction that was put forth by the media. I mean, they instantly rushed to and blamed Donald Trump for this incident. And this is in no way Donald Trump's fault. I mean, and they'll blame Trump for anything. If they're walking in their home and stub their toe on a coffee table, they'll say it was Trump's fault. They think that Donald Trump is a bigoted racist, and he bases his whole political agenda and policy off of race, right? That's what the media wants you to believe. And, you know, because the media is so smart. They have it all pinpointed and figured out just fine. Well, this past weekend had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It was two groups that were clashing with each other. And if we're concerned about anything that took place from this past weekend, we should be worried about the state of the human race, because I'm pretty sure that that's what's in jeopardy, not, you know, the President of the United States. And with this whole situation in Virginia, the media hears that they are alt-right groups who are clashing. The media is very quick to remove alt in front of the word right. The word right is all they focus on. It's as if that word is directly related to conservatism, just like I consider myself a classic liberal. If you knew what a classic liberal was, you would realize that those were the founders. Classic liberal is a constitutionalist, and I know that. I will and forever associate myself with aligning the policies of being a classic liberal. Classic liberal. If you were to remove classic before the liberal, that's when you're playing a new ball game. And I recognize this differentiation. So when stating my beliefs and opinions, I tread lightly by making sure I add classic in there. Common sense, right? If I were to come out and say I'm a liberal, then that attributes to me being a modern day liberal. That's just the language of the parties. Same as right and alt-right. If you add the word alt in front of right, it changes the meaning. However, the liberal media, in all of their stupid ways, wants you, the viewer, to attribute the two as being the same. And that's just not the case. So media, please spare me my time by making my podcast more valuable to where I have to stop pointing you out for being wrong. I mean, this whole podcast so far has been pointing out the media's follies, the media's wrongdoings. Yes, I want to cover the stories, but I'm telling you, the root of the problem is the media. How they're portraying these events that took place. I mean, both of these groups from last weekend are crazy. None of them came out and said that they had specific political ties. Nobody said I'm liberal. Nobody said I'm conservative. They got lumped into this alt-right, and I think that's a good term for them if the media could just learn what the term alt-right really means. It's not conservatism. It's not liberal. I'm not discussing the two political parties that are coming together to make last weekend's situations what they were. It's not what I'm doing. These two groups in Virginia, both crazy, both equally crazy. You had one who pledged allegiance to communism. You had another who pledged their allegiance to Nazism. Those were the two groups, so you can call them alt-rights. They are alternative to the right. They're not the right. You could also call them alt-left if you wanted to. They're not the left. They're an alternative to the left. And that's why we settle on alt-right for some reason. Okay, it's just the term that got coined for them, but that doesn't mean liberal media. You don't lump those protesters in with conservatism. Just like I said earlier, you wouldn't link them with classic liberalism. The liberals today. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out Antifa. The group Antifa, who props up socialism. Wait a second. The media is blaming Trump and conservatives for what took place this past Saturday. Should I remind you who ran as a socialist this last election? Was it Ted Cruz? Was it Marco Rubio? Chris Christie? Jeb Bush? Donald Trump? Nope. Bernie Sanders. And which side of the aisle was he on? Democrat? At least my last knowledge, he was a socialist, but he ran as a Democrat. Democratic ticket. And these groups who clashed in Virginia were fascist. And in a situation like this, of course, like I said, you've had the media who just bashes and blames the right for everything. And me, who sits on the side of conservatism and constitutionalism, I'm not blaming the left for this. You see, politics and society only goes so far in relation to the mindset of individuals. And I know that might be really deep and hard to digest, but if you can just for a moment, just try and think about that. There comes a time where, okay, we'll break it down into layman's terms. You have your Republicans and you have your Democrats. You have your Republican policies and you have your Democrat policies. You know, Republican policies tend to be more, they're pro-life, anti-gay marriage, no transgenderism in the military, and then pretty much the opposite. There you go. You have your liberals and you have your left. But what we're seeing today, and those are new forms of government today. Just like back in the day, classic liberalism was its own form of government, which we don't see in both parties today. It was a special breed that isn't anywhere today. But with the situation in Virginia, could it just be that it's individuals clumped into groups that don't really align with a particular political party? And why isn't the media talking about that? Why are we rushing to blame a party when it's the individual, and that individual made a group, a fascist group? And I'm sorry to say, but as this choo-choo train of life goes down the tracks, It's not so much becoming about politics anymore. About what can my party do for me? It's people who are actually starting to take matters into their own hands, and in this situation, it's a bad thing. Individualism is a good thing if you're doing it for a right and just cause. But loss of life, like this last week, that's not a right and just cause. That's my way or no way. That's what that was last week. So I think in this situation, you can remove politics, modern day politics. I mean, this is kind of stuff that resorts back to, like I said earlier, Nazism, communism. We haven't seen those in this country. Is it a start now? Is it something that's being introduced now? I mean, I know we've had, like the KKK and all those other hate-filled groups. But is it a new dawn? Is it a new day where a new group is being birthed? And I think today, both conservatives and liberals, sorry about that, can come together and honestly say what took place was a tragedy. And this one makes me think that it doesn't align with a particular party. Because the liberals aren't going to say, good job. Conservatives aren't going to say, good job. It's an individual organization that caused this problem. I mean, even the liberals or the conservatives who go home at night in the privacy of their homes and before they lay their head in bed, their gut feeling, both sides, they don't agree with this stuff. This is where politics is completely removed. All I can say is the media, please look at it from this perspective. Media, please stop adding fuel to this fire. Stop casting blame. This is a situation where both aisles could come together to unite for the common good. Malice towards none, goodwill to all. This was that opportunity. When individual organizations strike, it's an opportunity for the political parties to unite, to stand firm, to squash these groups out. And all I can say today, this evening, as we're running out of time, I gotta wrap this up, is God, please have mercy on the souls of the media. And let this trend stop. And let's get back to the basics. Back in a minute. Next, we have Heroes in History. And it's a good one today. I wanted to do it. I was going to do something else, which will be next week's Heroes in History, but I thought with the situations that took place this week in Virginia, it was appropriate to cover this particular topic. Please stay tuned for Heroes in History. That's coming up next. Back in a minute. A preacher, theologian, in a plot to take down evil. Born in 1906 in Breslau, which is now current-day Poland, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a man of passion and steadfast principles. From the age of 14, Bonhoeffer knew that he wanted to be a theologian. His beliefs were unwavering like the sea floor clinging to an anchor. Bonhoeffer loved the advancement of self and wanted to be the best disciple of teachings that he could possibly be, so he enrolled in Berlin University. At that time, Berlin was the best university in the world for teaching theology. However, shortly after being accepted into the university, he quickly realized that the religious views he carried differed from those who surrounded him. Bonhoeffer viewed the Bible to be very much alive. He viewed that the principles and stories written within the text were still needing to be related to everyday realities. The pupils in his classroom viewed it as though a lot of it has been disproved, and they just wanted to study the text for historical reference. Bonhoeffer quickly said no, and that there is a God behind the text and that he wants us to know him personally. Bonhoeffer realized that he was in a sea of theological liberalism in Berlin. Theological liberalism was something where people didn't really believe the teachings wholeheartedly, but still wanted to go along with the motions. It seemed as though Germany viewed it since that we gave the world Martin Luther, we are now set. In using this same rhetoric, in a sense, this is how Adolf Hitler quickly rose to power. Hitler made the Germans perceive him as being a strong Christian. Hitler knew that if he didn't come off this way, his agenda would never move forward. So Hitler was good at pretending to walk the walk and talk the talk of Christianity. Hitler spoke out against communism and Bolshevism and spoke about how he was for principles and values. All of this was a front, of course, and he hid behind what was a mask of resentment for the Christian way of life. But Hitler knew that if he was to reveal this should surely be the end to his rise of power. However, Bonhoeffer saw through the mask of Hitler for who he truly was. Bonhoeffer, from a young age, was trained to think rigorously. Therefore, it made it very difficult to fool him. His family also had many social connections, and they knew, even before Hitler became chancellor, they knew exactly how corrupt he was and how much he truly was anti-German and anti-Christian. 2 days after Hitler takes his place as chancellor, Bonhoeffer goes on the radio airwaves meticulously dissecting Adolf Hitler. Bonhoeffer wouldn't stop. Until his death 12 years later, Bonhoeffer would continuously condemn and criticize Hitler and the Nazis. At this time, many of the preachers and theologians moved aside and looked the other way in order to avoid confrontation. There was, however, a few leaders of faith who stood strong, and Bonhoeffer was the leader of that pack. They knew that they needed to stand up to the Nazis for fear the Nazis would take over the church. The Nazis wanted to take over the church with the intent of looking at it with racial lines. Bonhoeffer stood up and said, "No, you can't do that." Bonhoeffer's best friend was a Jew who converted to Christianity and wanted to also become a preacher, but the Nazis viewed it that he had Jewish blood, so he can't be a member of the clergy. The Nazis wanted to racially divide the church. Bonhoeffer and his men stood up and said no more. And from this day, the Barmen Declaration was born. It was almost like a petition that the clergymen from all over signed on to say that the Nazis cannot take over the church. And from this declaration, Bonhoeffer's Confession Church came alive. So it was Bonhoeffer's Confession Church and the Nazis' Right Church. Immediately, the Right Church of the Nazis marked the members and the clergy of the Confessions Church as being the enemy. The Nazis, one by one, started to send those from the Confession Church to the front lines and to concentration camps, and little by little, they were decimated. Before the war completely broke out, Bonhoeffer knew that he wouldn't continue to make it in Germany, so he fled to America. Quickly after arriving, though, he knew he made a big mistake. He felt God calling him to go back to Germany and stand with his people in this time of evil. So Bonhoeffer turned back around and headed back to Germany. With the Nazis growing bigger and bigger each day, Bonhoeffer needed to find a way of helping, because if he was to return to the church, he would be kidnapped and sent to a concentration camp. So Bonhoeffer became a spy, working closely with his brother-in-law, who was a member of the German Military Intelligence Agency, and the agency at that time was against the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. So Bonhoeffer and his brother-in-law began to conspire against the Nazis. At this point, Bonhoeffer is a spy, and he is also helping the Jews to escape. As time goes on, the target on his head from the Nazis is starting to come in to better focus. In 1941, Bonhoeffer is arrested and sent to a prison, and 1 year later, he is sent to Flossenburg concentration camp. And with direct orders from Hitler, on April 9, 1945, Bonhoeffer is murdered by the Nazis at dawn. Because of his faith in Jesus and standing up for the Jews, he was put to death. Just hours before Bonhoeffer's death, as he walked to his death place, he was preaching and standing firm in his beliefs. Bonhoeffer was a man who lived his faith each and every day. He was a man who stood in the face of Nazism and called it for what it was, pure evil. That day, Bonhoeffer died a martyr and a hero. If anyone is an example of how God calls you to live, Bonhoeffer is certainly that. It's that point in the podcast where we say goodbye and wish each other farewell. And I hope as you finish out the work week this week, that you take a little bit away from this podcast and just show and shed light on your coworker, your family member, or your friend. Just the truth of the American experiment. I had a youth minister when I was a lot younger, and youth group met every Wednesday night, just like we meet on this podcast every Wednesday night. So I thought this was fitting for this evening. And as he was coming to the conclusion of his sermon, he would always leave us with this. He would always say, "Love God and love your neighbor." And as always here on the podcast, live life, restore liberty, and pursue happiness. Have a good night.
This has been a Liberty Root production.